History is a clock that people use to tell their political and cultural time of day. It is also a compass that people use to find themselves on the map of human geography.
Yes, Dr. Clark.
History tells of people where they have been and what they have been,
Yes.
where they are and what they are.
Yes.
Most important, history tells a people where they still must go and what they still must be.
Yes, sir.
The relationship of history to the people is the same as the relationship of a mother to her child.
Yes, sir.
Congo is like a nightmare in heaven.
Welcome to the Gilchrist.
It's a heaven.
Welcome to the Gilchrist experience. Welcome to the show. Few technical, live from Manhattan Neighborhood Network. Welcome to the show. We have today Professor Ngemi and Minister Clemson Brown. We're going to talk about Africa and the problems that we're having there in the Congo. Professor Ngemi and I started this Congo coalition back in 2000 with Reverend Grant, and Reverend Grant's anniversary, or his birthday, is coming up December 17th, and his spirit came to me and told me that we should be doing something with the Congo. Okay. And we have a video coming up in a few minutes and show you the full background of the Congo. Professor Ngemi, how are you today?
I'm doing
this video is going to show most of the problems that we're having with in the Congo.
Yes.
The great resources, 24 trillion to be exact,
right.
known resources.
Known resources up to now.
I understand the combination of you and Clemson Brown, we're going to start an army to go liberate the Congolese,
Okay.
our brothers.
A civil rights group.
A civil rights group
Not an army,
fighting
but
for the civil rights of the Congolese.
Yeah, I think it would be good to point out to our viewers, when you mention Reverend Grant, that we're talking about the Convent Avenue Baptist Church.
Right.
Up in Harlem, 45th and Convent Avenue, one of actually the largest churches, African-American churches in Harlem, if not in New York, one of them, right. So it's important that people know why we are doing this. If Reverend Grant had a vision to start Congo Coalition in 2000, meaning that this thing has been going on since 1998.
Right.
Where we have now the toll of the people that have died, between 6 to over 9 million people have died in the Congo. So as you said, that this short film, about 25 minutes we're going to view, is giving you the background and also telling you what has been happening, why so millions of people have died in the Congo, on this planet Earth. And there's not one government in the world that has said anything about it, to denounce it, keeping in mind that at the end of World War II, the United Nations pledged never again would the world community allow genocide to take place anywhere in the world. Now, why is it that 8 million have died in the Congo? There's not one country in the world that had said or denounced this genocide. So this short movie tells us about it, about why the world is silent. Silent over 8 million people have died on this planet Earth, not 8 million animals, 8 million human beings. So that's what this short movie is telling us about.
Welcome to the show, Clemson Brown.
Thank you.
You and I have been talking about setting up a museum, we're talking about our admiration for Dr. Clark and his whole perspective and how we as African Americans should take hold of the wealth of African nation. So here's a classic example of where we should unite as Africans in America to take back the wealth of African Africans in Africa?
I think first we need to recognize that Africa is our birthright.
Amen.
It is our inheritance.
Amen.
We are African people. Here in America, we hold a key and pivotal role in the liberation of Africa. We may not fully understand it, but it is our experience here, living in America, in the belly of this beast, and the experience that we have had puts us in a position that we can just organize. It will not only liberate the Congo, but it will liberate all of Africa and the world. We are pivotal people right now in the liberation of the world. The reason we don't know it is because we don't, again, know our history.
Right, exactly.
And we can't fully be ourselves until we know that history. And in understanding that history, we will understand our role in liberating and working to liberate Africa, because it liberates us. It would take us out of this box that we're in America and put us in a different place, a place of leadership, a place that we have been called by the divine to be in.
Amen.
This
Amen.
will transport us. We must work to liberate Africa, and we're in that key role here in America.
This is in the tradition of John Henry Clark.
It is. He said, look, you know, Pan-Africanism or perish. There's no two ways about it.
Right?
Pan-Africanism or
Amen.
perish.
Explain Pan-Africanism.
Pan-Africanism is the understanding that we must unite on both sides of this continent, both economically and culturally. Again, we must know our history in order to bring that about. At least we must begin the process of learning that history. Pan-Africanness is seeing ourselves for who and what we are as a people. We're an African people. And economically, we're the wealthiest people on the earth. But we don't have access to that because other people, other nations control, invade, and have taken the resources, the trillions, I mean trillions and trillions of dollars out of Africa, and they're doing it now. But if we unite, we have that power to stop that. Pan-Africanism or perish. If we do not, we won't survive. We need those resources. They are ours. We have a right to them. They are our birthright.
Professor Ngemi, update us on what the true wealth of the nation. I mean, we had this a couple of weeks ago when I had you on the show.
Yes.
I want to emphasize to people out there that this coltan, 80% of the world's coltan is located in Africa and Congo, to be specific. No other place on earth does coltan exist, except for Australia.
Australia, yeah.
Coltan in Congo is so cheap that it put the Australian out of business, right?
That's right. As a
So
couple
now-
of Australian mines had to close.
Okay.
Had to close. Some of them had to close because of the competition. Let me just mention that I think Canada might have also, like, I think 1.5%.
Oh, well, that doesn't even count.
Yeah.
Doesn't even
So,
count.
but yeah, 80% is in the Congo of the
So
world.
every
reserve.
cell phone has coltan in it,
That's right.
and the cell phone cannot exist
Without the coltan.
without coltan.
That's right.
So when you walk around with a cell phone to your ear,
Yeah.
equated to you've got the blood of the Congolese on your ear.
Yes.
So this is humanity. This is about humanity.
Yeah.
I can't wait for you to see the film. I'm excited about it. I've been dealing with this for 10 years, and this film has been such an eye-opener to me. I knew all these facts, but it's laid out so beautifully in this film that I've lost sleep over all week, dying to do this show. I'm trying to get Reverend Sharpton involved. We're talking about the liberation of the Congolese. Where else where democracy should really reign, but in the homeland?
Yeah.
free up our resources.
And especially,
And this is an example of corporate greed.
yes, yes,
The value of the Congo, all the goodies in the Congo are running Wall Street.
yeah.
So we take over the Congo, we take back our land and our resources, and then we can control our environment. This is black on black crime. There are no white people in there killing Congolese.
No.
Black people have said that, just like you got in Brooklyn, blacks killing blacks, that's what we have in the Congo. That's what's so obnoxious about this whole thing.
Yeah. Yes.
You've got Kabila, and I mean, this is happening throughout the world. There's nothing new. God is real, and people need to wake up. You have to understand that God is real. And the only solution to this has been the law that Obama passed, which I equate to a gift from God. All of you might disagree, but this is my take on it.
Yes.
All right? And this law, 109456,
Yes.
you'll see it in the piece. Now, this law, explain 109456.
Well, this law was written by Barack Obama when he was senator.
Right.
I mean, he was so strong about stopping the genocide in the Congo, especially the gang raping of little girls as young as 9 years old, 10 years old, little girls being gang raped by men, sometimes 8, 10, 20 men, to the point where by the time they finish, the girl's reproductive system is destroyed completely for life. So Barack Obama was very strong on putting together this law. He wrote this law in 2005. It passed both houses of Congress, and President Bush, George W. Bush, signed it in December 2006. This law is so specific about stopping what's happening in the Congo that if it had been applied 2 years ago, this would have stopped. Right? This would have stopped. The genocide would have stopped. The gang raping would have stopped. And then, like 2 weeks ago when we had a show, I told of a woman in Goma, in Kivu, that was gang raped by these Rwandan militias. After they gang raped her, they mutilated her body. They cut up her legs and her arms and left her to die. And then they carved her genitals, carved it, and took it with them, and left where they left the body these condoms with their sperms in it after they violated her. So it's still happening today, as you hear about. We're going to talk about elections after this, because the so-called Joseph Kabila, who's president now, who is a Rwandan Tutsi, was set up there as president by Paul Kagame. He knows about all of these things happening. Yet, because he's from Rwanda and he works for Paul Kagame, has never condemned Paul Kagame, has never denounced the genocide happening in the East, has never even attempted to stop it. He will work out a deal with Paul Kagame that Rwanda and Congo wants to stop this, and they send more Rwandans in the Congo, who become part of the Congolese army so that they can kill, they can steal the resources without, so they will be blaming this on the Congolese army. Because you have all these Rwandans who have now Congolese uniforms on, and so they're killing, they're raping, and the president in the Congo, Joseph Kabila, the Rwandan, never says anything about it. So that's why even today it continues. But that law, that law that Barack Obama passed, wrote and passed Congress, is, as you're going to see in the movie, it's the law that can stop all of these things today.
What is that law? Tell the audience what that law
Well, we're going to see it on a film, but in short, the law says, the law is there to stop the genocide in the Congo.
The funding.
It says, first of all, that the U.S. will help the Congolese build an army strong enough to defend the Congo.
Amen.
Right?
And that's what we want to do.
But when they started doing this, what Joseph Kabila, the president, did was to take Rwandan soldiers, to try to let them be trained as Congolese soldiers. You see, so that when they will be killing, and so they, in other words, it would never end. So what we did was we wrote to the President Obama to tell him that you shouldn't apply that part of the law, because the soldiers being trained are not Congolese, they are Rwandans in Congolese uniforms. So that part was stopped. But then it says, the law goes further, it says that if the State Department determines, the Secretary of State determines that any country is involved in what's happening in the Congo, that the State Department, the U.S. can stop funding or giving aid to that company, to that country. All right? Now, the U.S. has evidence. In fact, on October 1st, 2010, the UN mapping report says that Rwanda and Paul Kagame had committed genocide in the Congo.
All right, you know what we're going to do?
But yet the State Department continues to do that. So we'll see that in a moment.
This is all very confusing to you.
Yes.
So what we're going to do, I'm going to run this video,
Right.
and we're going to give you the history of the Congo. Now, I just want you to sit back and pay attention to what you're being shown.
Right.
All right? Let's go to the videotape. Thank you.
Congo is like a nightmare in heaven. It's a heaven because, you know, Congo is the heart of Africa. So much natural resources, the people, the animals, the flowers, everything, you know. Congo is heaven, but the thing is that people are living like in hell. People are dying. At first, we used to hear 1 million people die, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the situation is getting worse and worse, you know, because the money is there, the resources are there in Congo, and everybody wants a piece of Congo. Everybody wants a piece of Congo.
Why are people living hand to mouth in one of the most mineral-rich countries in the world? The Congo produces more than $1 billion of gold alone each year.
And the cobalt and the tin and the copper and the tungsten, all of that we're benefiting from, but yet we're silent.
When people invade your country, they rape your women, they rape the kids, they morally control your mind.
There's a pattern to genocide. You can see it coming. I mean, it's like a hurricane.
Are we going to have to wait for 20 more years before somebody does something to stop this Holocaust?
There's a global consensus that exists that says it's okay for nearly 6 million black people to die in the heart of Africa and for us to be silent.
So I kept asking our intelligence people, is there any truth to this? I mean, what's happening out there?
I don't think policymakers could claim that they didn't know.
There's something wrong. There's something wrong with us in terms of the way we think about Africa.
The story of Congo is often overlooked for its complexity. It's a story where boundaries are porous and national identities mean little. Militant groups with ever-changing acronyms are not who they claim to be, and neighbors loot and murder while they are praised by the international community. But the death toll is now surpassing that of the Holocaust, in part because of the way the United States is involved in Central Africa. Now facing a critical juncture in their history, the Congolese people need us to change the way we're involved so that they can have the space to start rebuilding their country.
The first principle to understand about the Congo: the affairs of the Congo have not been determined by the people of the Congo. The national boundaries were formed at the Berlin Conference in 1885, when Congo was given to King Leopold II of Belgium as his own personal property.
He owned it for 23 years, and during that time made a huge fortune off the territory, estimated at well over $1 billion in today's American dollars, primarily from turning people into forced laborers to gather ivory and then even more so wild rubber.
As the Belgians were pursuing ivory and rubber, though, they discovered lots of gold deposits, diamonds, copper, cobalt, and many other minerals.
So, since 1885, Congo has been caught in the midst of a geostrategic battle, primarily for her natural resources.
Part of its ongoing conflict has been the desire by different armed groups and neighboring countries to benefit, to get rich, to make money from those particular minerals.
These resources that are found in the Congo are vital to major industries in the West, whether we're talking about the automotive industry, aerospace industry, technology industry, the electronics industry, even the jewelry industry.
These minerals exist in great profusion throughout the Democratic Republic of Congo, especially in its eastern part. And this is the largest territory on Earth which really doesn't have a functioning government.
People can say anything, but the Congo is still a police state. There is no freedom of the press. You hear people being killed. The army is not an army. You know, this is a bunch of people who are indisciplined, who still roam the streets.
But all this 125 years must be taken into consideration to fully understand why Congo is in a weakened state today. If we look from 1885 to 1908, we're talking about personal rule, enslavement. From 1908 to 1960, colonialism, Congo under colonial rule. Congo finally elects its leader in 1960, and in 61 was assassinated. So we have assassination. Then a dictator was put over the people for another 3 decades. So now we have dictatorship. Then an invasion was backed from outside with Rwanda and Uganda in 1996 that Congolese people suffer from to this day. So we have 125 years of this. Now what that does is it destroys and eviscerates the Congolese institutions.
And when you have great wealth, no government, it's an open invitation, and it's been a sort of a free-for-all war as rival warlords surrounding African countries like Rwanda and Uganda in the east have just gone in there and helped themselves to this enormous net wealth.
Since 1996, the conflict in Congo has claimed the lives of an estimated 6 million people. Today, neighboring governments continue plundering by using proxy forces to displace entire communities for access to the land.
Wako wanasema ni rako ndarafori kunatoka Rwanda, inatokea Rwanda inakuja mpaka huku. Maeko mambo ya kusema rako ndio iko napigana. Basha shuka mpaka hivi. Kiumba yote donc kiumba iko hapa nayo inatombe. Njoki ona population yote ya kiumba wote wanakimbia.
Scenes like this are often misunderstood as simply the result of an ethnic war, a mistake that only benefits those trying to hide their illegal exploits.
It has nothing to do with ethnicity. They killed Congolese like they were flies. You see how people, you feel a mosquito and just hit? That's exactly how they killed. It did not mean anything to them how they were killing the Congolese, as long as we can just wipe them out and get access. I mean, the mines exist. People used to live in those areas. Have we ever asked who was living where the mine was before? Did the mine just show up? No, there were villages where those mines were.
From 1996 to the present, an estimated 6 million dead. Abject poverty. People living in bestial conditions. Hundreds of thousands of women systematically raped as a strategy of war.
Rape happened to be one of the weapons that worked the most, because as soon as you destabilize a community, you rape the entire village, the women of the entire village, in front of the children, in front of the husband, in front of the neighbors, that community is broken completely. Because the men cannot look at the wives in the eye and say, we were unable to protect you, and the women cannot survive that trauma.
Congo is one of the worst places in the world to be a woman or a girl. And one of my recent trips to Congo, I met up with a young girl who was 15 years old. She had been violently raped by one of the rebel groups, and she had been held for 3 months in a hole in the ground. in a pit, naked, and every day another combatant would come and rape her. She was only 15. She realized at one stage that she had fallen pregnant. And then they killed her best friend who was in the pit with her. There were two of them. And she had to stay in that pit with the body for 6 weeks, unable to climb out of the pit, knowing that she was pregnant and still being raped day in, day out.
Since 1996, hundreds of thousands of Congolese women and girls have been raped, and the violence is escalating. Their attackers are foreign or Congolese, the lines between them blurred by years of greed, chaos, and impunity. As the women are broken, so is the community, a war strategy that leaves tens of thousands of people dead every month.
They reduce you to a non-human, in essence. People are being reduced to a non-human so that they cannot think. They can feel powerless. They can feel hopeless, so they can give up.
Imagine, I mean, you may not even be able to put your wrap your mind around it, but imagine nearly 6 million people dying in the middle of Europe, and yet we're silent.
Millions of Congolese people have lost their life as a result of the crises that we've been discussing, and it has warranted almost no sustained and enterprising reporting from the media of the world. It has obtained no great purchase on the popular imagination. Millions of people dead.
Why is it that nobody's talking about it? This is the same international community that said, you know, when there was a Holocaust, that no more genocide would take place, and yet the same community left Rwanda genocide take place, and yet those who committed genocide in Rwanda crossed over in the Congo, and the Congo has become the victim of what happened in Rwanda, and what the international community didn't do to stop it.
In 1994, the international community failed to stop the Rwandan genocide and effectively punish its perpetrators. Since then, violence in Central Africa has escalated, along with a growing culture of impunity.
If you don't hold to account those who carry out these horrible atrocities, it leaves the door open for them to do more.
Free to flee the country, hundreds of militants crossed over into Congo for fear of retribution from the Tutsi-led rebellion that took power in Rwanda. The militants were hidden among millions of predominantly civilian Hutu refugees trying to escape the violence in their country.
The refugee camps, which had over 1 million people in them, were being controlled by these very same genocidaires, these people who had committed the genocide.
Paul Kagame, who led the Tutsi rebellion and was now in charge of Rwanda, saw these militant refugees as a threat to Rwandan national security.
He came to Washington, D.C. and essentially said, if the international community is not going to do it, we're going to take things into our own hands. The U.S. had no official response to that, which he interpreted as a green light.
In the absence of justice, a terrifying cycle of revenge was about to take hold in Congo, as Paul Kagame's army prepared to massacre what many experts estimate to be hundreds of thousands of refugees.
And reports started coming in about atrocities that had been committed, in which they had slaughtered thousands of Hutu civilians. Now, believe me, I have no sympathy whatsoever for these genocidaires, these Interahamwe guys who had, committed the genocide in Rwanda. But the civilians, obviously, the children, the women, are you kidding? Why would they be victimized by this?
Hutu were not combatants. They were not people under arms. They were elderly, they were women, they were children, they were sick people who were killed in a systematic and highly motivated way, and the UN knew about it almost in real time.
The UN knew, the US government knew, I believe other governments knew as well. They did not make an effort to openly investigate those, or not good enough. They allowed investigations to be blocked, and they didn't push it. Now the question can be asked, why was that the case? And of course, part of the difficulty here was that many policymakers felt guilty. They hadn't done enough to stop the Rwandan genocide, and that genocide guilt allowed them to cover this up?
That guilt manifested in the Clinton era in an extremely pro-Rwanda policy, which essentially allowed the new government in Rwanda to do whatever they wanted, both within their country and within Congo, with impunity.
With the leaders of the United States and the United Nations looking the other way, Kagame proceeded with a full-scale invasion of Congo with his Ugandan ally, Yoweri Museveni.
So the question is, what role did the U.S. play in this? And it was a pretty direct supporting role. I happened to go to Rwanda just before this invasion took place. And, major shipments of weapons were coming in at night to support the Rwandan army. We had placed people in the country who were training Rwandan army troops. And in short, we were supporting the invasion.
The United States, what they decided to do in the final analysis was to support an invasion of the Congo.
In this case, you had Rwanda and Uganda invading their neighbor, plundering it of its natural resource wealth, and suffering no sanctions at the United Nations Security Council. And you have to ask why, and it's because they had the very strong support and backing of the United States, United Kingdom, and other governments.
The reason the United States supported Rwanda and Uganda in their invasion of Congo cannot simply be attributed to genocide guilt. The U.S. had economic and political motivations as well. One reason for our involvement extended back to our support of Mobutu Sese Seko, a dictator we helped install in Congo and supported for 32 years.
This man bled his country dry. He extracted even more money from it than King Leopold did in his time, but Mobutu had a longer reign and a much more developed economy to plunder. And the United States was deeply complicit in that because we supported Mobutu lock, stock, and barrel.
But after the Cold War ended, essentially in 1989, 1990, many of his backers, including the United States government and the French government, essentially abandoned him. He became a liability to them because he had such a bad human rights record.
When Mobutu became an embarrassment, we helped Rwanda and Uganda overthrow him and install another dictator, and another. Now the Congolese people are victims of a corrupt dictatorial network which receives financial support from the United States.
They have looted the place outrageously, taking hundreds of millions of dollars in minerals, sponsoring some of the worst warlords, and with never a protest from Washington.
The role the U.S. plays in Central Africa is complex. Historically, we've maintained influence in the area for access to minerals on which our economy and military rely, but our connection to Rwanda serves our interests in yet another way.
A problem here is really a problem of political will in the United States. Why is Rwanda and why are Uganda important to the U.S. military? Precisely because we can have them do things in Africa that we don't wish to do for ourselves. We can have their soldiers die if need be. We can have them deploy places if need be. And so having proxies, having allies, having clients who are willing to do your bidding becomes very important.
The disciplined, organized armies of Rwanda and Uganda are useful for protecting American interests in Africa. Similarly, friendships with dictators are easier to manage than complex, thriving democracies. For generations, the way the United States has been involved in Central Africa has helped perpetuate tyranny and dependency.
So, when you see these prescriptions coming out of Washington and they say, well, we tried everything, we support peacekeepers, we've had peace talks, it's usually within the parameters of maintaining the current order.
This has serious implications in terms of what people don't talk about, U.S. foreign policy. That's where the problem lies. It has something to do with the United States and Great Britain supporting strong men in Africa rather than supporting the people.
Now, it's easy to point fingers and to pin the blame of these problems on others. Yes, a colonial map that made little sense helped to breed conflict. The West has often approached Africa as a patron or a source of resources rather than a partner. But the West is not responsible for the destruction of the Zimbabwean economy over the last decade. Wars in which children are enlisted as combatants.
But now, Obama, when he went to Ghana, he had a huge speech, that really woke up Africans. He was very harsh. He was almost as a dad telling the kids, you guys need to get your act together. You can't have election here and sprinkle some elections there and call that democracy. That was good for him to say that, saying that, he's demanding that there are some accountability for political leaders in Africa. But he said something that still sticks with me today. He said that America is ready to support strong institutions, but not strong men.
Africa doesn't need strong men. It needs strong institutions. As for America and the West, our commitment must be measured by more than just the dollars we spend. I pledge substantial increases in our foreign assistance, which is in Africa's interests and America's interests. But the true sign of success is not whether we are a source of perpetual aid that helps people scrape by. It's whether we are partners in building the capacity for transformational change.
So, there are a whole series of things that can be done, keeping in mind that the ultimate solution is going to come from the Congolese people themselves. Our role on the outside is to make sure that we create the space for them to solve and address the challenges that they face.
There's a strong desire for democracy in Congo, with leaders poised to start fixing their country. But key to their success is international pressure on Rwanda and Uganda to stop their destructive intervention. President Obama seems to understand this. For years, he has been an advocate for Congo, and as a senator, he co-sponsored a law that outlines a comprehensive strategy for Congo to realize justice. But key elements of this law have not been fully implemented.
So, President Obama wrote a law to support the Congo, signed into law in 2006 by George Bush, the president then, co-sponsored by the Secretary of State today. That law is the most comprehensive law you can think about when it comes to supporting the Congo. Now we have a law that says that the Secretary of State has the power to withhold aid to any nation deemed to be destabilizing the Congo if she has sufficient evidence that this country is doing so. We have so many evidence on Rwanda and Uganda, and we even have a leaked UN report that all the Secretary of State have to do is read it and say, okay, we are not going to support you. But since 2000, the United States have given Rwanda $1 billion. The leaked UN report is calling this government a genocidal government. Why is the United States supporting a genocidal government?
And it doesn't have to be that way. You do not have to slaughter millions of people to get access to the cobalt for your colored television, or access to the cobalt for your aerospace industry, or access to the copper for your automobile industry.
All right, you dealing with the economy, you want the coltan. Man, Congolese people don't eat coltan. Congolese people can't eat gold. Talk to the Congolese people. We're going to let you get the resources, but for God's sake, stop killing the people. Stop letting Rwanda, Uganda, and Joseph Kabila kill with impunity.
The situation in the Congo is not just a Congolese issue. It's not just an African issue, but it's a global issue. It's a worldwide issue. Congo is a part of the second largest rainforest in the world. It's vital to the fight against climate change. If you're concerned about climate change, you should be concerned about Congo. half of those who have died as a result of the conflict are children under the age of 5. So if you're a child advocate, if you're concerned about children, you ought to be concerned about what's happening in the Congo. If you're concerned about women, if you have a mother, a sister, you ought to be concerned about what's happening in the Congo. If you drive an automobile, or flying airplanes, or own a cell phone, as a human being, at the very least, you ought to be concerned. You ought to say something. You ought to want to find out why this is happening. You ought to be moved to want to bring an end to it.
Nzambe, abambala biso, benga nzambe, doko bika, benga nzambe, abambala biso, benga nzambe, doko bika, benga nzambe.
8 out of 10 people in Congo are unemployed and live on 30 cents or less per day.
À Kinshasa, 9 filles des rues sur 10 vivent de la prostitution.
For Congolese children, the tragedy is endless. Massacred in their villages by machetes or recruited as child soldiers, hundreds of thousands of children are victims, and many have become murderers.
So as we look at what's taking place, the quickest way to end the conflict in the Congo is global.
Welcome back. I hope you paid attention. This is a human rights struggle. We see the answer there is the Obama Law, 109, to stop the Congo. But I think we owe it to ourselves to pay attention to what happens here in America amongst ourselves, and what we can do to rectify this injustice. It should hit home right there in what you've seen. The history of the Congo, it's our history, and we need to do something about it. Joining us again, Graham Weatherspoon is with us, and of course, Minister Clemson Brown and Professor Ngemi, a native of the Congo. You saw him in the film, so this is dear to your heart. I mean, I lost sleep after I saw that. We've been dealing with this for 10 years now, but after seeing this piece, it just brought everything home to me, and where we can really do something about it now.
Yes.
So, where do we go from here?
Well, where we go from here is, well, we have a march. We're organizing a march this coming Monday, the 19th.
Okay.
We are going to start on the corner of East 48th Street and First Avenue, where the mission of the Congo is. And then we are going to march. We are going to go to where the French, the Belgium, and the English or the England mission is, the United Kingdom is. And then after that, we're going to the United Nations mission to the UN is. We're going to those 4 countries, as you saw in the piece, because they are the ones who have been funding Paul Kagame and Rwanda, who have been funding Yoweri Museveni and Uganda, and they are the ones who set up the current government in the Congo, where they took an intelligence officer in the army of Rwanda, the so-called Joseph Kabila, and set him as president in the Congo in 2001, after they assassinated Laurent Kabila, who was Congolese, just like they assassinated Patrice Lumumba. They assassinated Laurent Kabila, and because he had adopted this young man, the so-called Joseph Kabila, but he is a Rwandan Tutsi, who was an intelligent officer in the Rwandan army that invaded the Congo in 1996. They set him up as president, and as you saw in the movie, they have looked the other way. While this young man has slaughtered Congolese leadership in the Congo and has allowed Rwanda and Uganda not only to occupy the eastern Congo where they've been taking all these resources, but also Rwanda has slaughtered these millions of people we're talking about.
6 million people.
It should be, by now it should be over 9 million. But
right.
Thank you very much. I'm pleased to be in another one of my intellectual homes here at the Slave Theater. Now, I pushed the health button a little too hard and had to go to one of those places called a hospital and deal with some weirdos called doctors. Then I really wanted to be cured after they finished with me. So I went to some real doctors, my family in Georgia. And my sisters and the nieces and the nephews and all the family pampering and catering. I'm beginning to get it back together again. And coming back to New York City, I had to realize that I wasn't going to change the world in a week. It might take a month, even a year, then I might not be the one to do it. It's difficult for ambitious people to understand that whosoever God is, it's not them. I can't make a hurricane, and I can't stop a hurricane. I think we, as a people, overdo the God business. We overload God, and He has equipped us with 2 feet to run the hell out of the way of things, eyes to see what's coming, senses, and we shouldn't call on Him so much because, after all, He must make spring in one side of the world and winter in another part of the world and fall on another part. He must have ice in one part and rain on the other part and watch those fishes in the sea. And He must watch that sparrow who don't know what limb he wants to light on or what song he wants to sing. So why can't you do something for yourself with the equipment that He's given you? Now, my notes for tonight deal with the African world under siege. We are the most potentially powerful people in all the world, and yet we have not used our power. We have let people develop something called a new world order without consulting a single one of us, not knowing that the great mental wealth comes out of a continent that is ours by every law of God and man. And if we were united within Africa, if the Organization of African Unity had some unity, they could say, there will be no new world order until you consult me. You get no diamonds, you get no gold, you get no manganese, you get no cobalt. You get nothing out of this continent. And we can pull Western industry to its knees without firing a shot. And we don't have to call this a boycott. Just call it selective buying and selling. We'll be selective about who we buy from and selective about who we sell to. And when we can control commodity markets based on the essence of power, we will be respected in the arena of power. The essence of power, no matter what the government is and no matter what the time is, the essence of power is the ability to include and exclude. That's all it boils down to. Who goes here and with whose permission? No matter what kind of government you live in, you have to, you stop at this gate and give an account of yourself or you move no further. Throughout the whole world, our enemy has either been at the gate in the house or in the bed, because we have not been able to control our enemy, because we have been hospitable to strangers. We have not asked the stranger, what is your mission in my house? We have not done what the old black father used to do when the father was truly an image in the house. When you come to court his daughter, on the third visit, the daughter don't show up. And the father comes into the living room and looks you over, says, son, what's your intentions toward my daughter? If you don't give him an answer, the daughter continues to be late, and you don't come there anymore. Now, we got a whole continent, never been defended militarily. People have been able to just walk in, take what they want. And why haven't we asked these strangers, what is your intention in this house? And if I'm attacked while you're in the house, whose side are you going to be on? And if I'm not satisfied with your answer, the door is over there. The one that let you in will let you out. Now, I want to take a holistic look at African people under siege, not just in Africa, but all over the world. I want to take a look at the propaganda against our mind that makes some of us think that we belong to a separate race that fell off of the moon. We are all one single people. There's only one single African people, though some of them might live on some specks of dust in the Caribbean Sea, and some of them might live in Georgia, and some of them might live in Africa. There's only one African people, and we have one enemy. And that enemy has one intention: to control us and our mineral wealth, to control our shorelines, and through propaganda, control our mind. Now, this thing started in the 1700s BC. It continued through the invasion from Western Asia, 1675 BC. For 2,000 years, the enemies of Africa came from Western Asia, mistakenly called the Middle East. And what did they do? What was their collective impact? Was to take away from the African's mind through propaganda the concept that the African could control a state. And when people take away from you the idea of controlling a state, they take away the container of your culture, your aspirations, your hope. They take away the gift you have to give to your child and their children in turn. And you are a motherless and a fatherless child politically in the world when someone takes away from you the cover, your clothing, your cultural clothing, your political clothing, the idea of controlling a state all by yourself. And you forget that half of civilization, half of history was over before anyone knew that a European was in the world. And what makes you think you need him so much? He's a pauper in the world and a thief and a robber in the world. What makes you think you need him? Now, to break the siege of African people, we have to stop playing games with each other. We have to stop identifying with our oppressor and our colonial master and identify with ourselves as an African people. We have to take our nose out of the air and stop boasting about our Dutch Scottish grandfathers and uncles. We have to stop saying we are Britishers. England don't want you as anything other than servants. America don't want you as anything other than servants. Because all of these colonial masters you've had want you only as servants after they've had you as slaves. When you identify with them, you're identifying with the people who raped your grandfather, grandmother, and you're demeaning Africa.
Gold mine.
Maybe we should have let that play a little longer then. We had some.
At the Oxford Union in England.
I read once, passingly, about a man named Shakespeare. I only read about him passingly, but I remember one thing he wrote that kind of moved me. He put it in the mouth of Hamlet, I think it was, who said, "To be, not to be." He was in doubt about something. Whether it was nobler in the mind of man to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, moderation, or take up arms against the sea of troubles and by opposing, end them. And I go for that. If you take up arms, you'll end it. But if you sit around and wait for the one who's in power to make up his mind that he should end it, you'll be waiting a long time. And in my opinion, the young generation of whites, blacks, brown, whatever else there is, you're living at a time of
Uganda.